After dedicating your life to serving your country, protecting your nation, and making countless sacrifices, you return home to the people you love and cherish. For over 50 years, you've worked to build a family filled with trust, love, and devotion. But what if, at the age of 80, you suddenly find out that everything you've believed to be true has been a lie? What if the children you've raised and called your own for decades aren't even yours? This is the heart-wrenching reality that Leonard Harris, a decorated war veteran, father, and well-respected member of his community, was forced to face. What started as an innocent DNA test intended to trace his ancestry led to the shocking discovery that tore his world apart. The test revealed a truth so devastating that it unraveled the foundation of everything Leonard had built his life on. His 4 children, the ones he had raised, loved, and provided for, were not biologically his. Each one had a different father. The betrayal Leonard faced was unimaginable. It was a lie so deep and painful that it sent him spiraling into confusion, heartbreak, and rage. Yet, this story isn't just about secrets and lies. It is about the explosive consequences that followed, the devastating chain of events triggered by this truth. What began with the revelation of a lie escalated into an unforgettable confrontation that ended in a gunshot and murder, a tragedy that shook the Harris family to its core. How far would you go when the very truth you've built your life on crumbles before your eyes? Stay with us as we delve into this shocking tale of betrayal, deception, and murder, a story that shows just how dangerous hidden truths can be. In a quiet town nestled in the South, time seems to move slower. The streets are lined with weathered homes, each porch creaking with the weight of memories from generations past. Neighbors nod and smile as they pass by, and everyone knows everyone. It's the kind of small-town atmosphere where families take root, and the Harris family was no exception. For over 50 years, Leonard Harris, a proud 80-year-old African-American veteran, had built his life here, becoming an essential part of this close-knit community. Known for his honor, discipline, and quiet strength, Leonard was a man who commanded respect without ever asking for it. Having served his country with pride, Leonard returned home to live out the American dream. He built a house, married his beloved wife, Evelyn, and raised 4 children who would carry on his legacy of love, loyalty, and faith. Leonard was a man of few words. He didn't speak much about his emotions, but he showed his love through actions. Whether it was fixing a neighbor's fence, offering advice to younger men, or leading prayers at church, Leonard was always there to lend a hand. He had created a life filled with purpose, and he took great pride in his family, his greatest accomplishment. Every evening, you could find him sitting on his porch, watching the sunset, his heart swelling with pride as he saw his grown children come and go, living lives of their own. To Leonard, family was everything. On the surface, the Harris family was the picture of perfection. For children, all raised in a home full of discipline, love, and Evelyn's signature warm cooking. Evelyn, Leonard's wife of 50 years, was the heart of the family. Her gentle nature and steady hands held everything together, making their house a home. She raised their children with love, teaching them to value family above all else. Neighbors often referred to Evelyn as a blessing, a woman who could turn any hardship into hope with her unwavering faith and love. For Leonard, his children were his legacy, the embodiment of his life's work. Darnell Harris, the eldest son at 48, was Leonard's mirror image. Strong, steady, and hardworking, Darnell had always been the first to step up when something needed to be done. From a young age, he worked alongside his father, learning the values of hard work and responsibility. Darnell was Leonard's right-hand man, the one he trusted above all else. Monique Harris, the 46-year-old daughter, was the nurturer of the family. A loving mother herself, she cherished the traditions Evelyn had instilled in her. Monique took it upon herself to keep the family close, organizing dinners, checking in on everyone, and ensuring that holidays were always spent together. For Monique, the family was sacred, and she carried that belief with her every day. Tyrone Harris, the 43-year-old middle son, brought light and energy to the family. Outgoing and successful, Tyrone had always been the life of the party. He brought joy wherever he went, lighting up every room with his infectious personality. Despite his charm, Tyrone too played a vital role in the family, ensuring the bonds between them remained strong. But behind the facade of a perfect family lay secrets that no one could have anticipated. Leonard's world, his family, his love, his trust, was about to come crashing down. What began as a simple DNA test would change everything, leading to a devastating betrayal that would tear apart the Harris family forever. How far would you go when the truth about your family is exposed? How far would you go when the lies you've been living unravel in front of your eyes? This is the story of Leonard Harris, his life, his family, and a shocking revelation that turned everything upside down. Stay with us as we explore the depths of betrayal and the dangerous consequences of buried truths. Tyrone was the life of any gathering, his infectious smile always lighting up the room. Known for his ability to ease tension with a joke or brighten even the heaviest of moods, he was someone people naturally gravitated toward. Leonard, his father, took a quiet pride in Tyrone's ability to stand out and carve out a place for himself in the world. Kesha Harris, the youngest at 38, was the free spirit of the family, and without a doubt, Leonard's favorite. As his baby girl, Kesha could do no wrong in Leonard's eyes. She was full of life, creative, and fiercely loyal to him, always making time to sit with him on the porch, reminiscing and laughing together. The bond they shared was unmistakable. Their family was admired by those around them, seen as a symbol of unity, resilience, and tradition. Leonard had built a life with Evelyn, his wife of over 50 years, and their children, Darnell, Monique, Tyrone, and Kesha. On Leonard's 80th birthday, the family came together to celebrate him. The house was alive with laughter, music, and the comforting smell of Evelyn's famous collard greens cooking in the kitchen. True to her thoughtful nature, Kesha presented Leonard with a gift that she was excited about, an Ancestry DNA kit. "Daddy," she said with a smile, handing him the small, unassuming box, "I thought it'd be fun to learn more about our family history, where we come from." Leonard chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Girl, I already know where I come from. Right here," he said, gesturing around the room. But he accepted the gift with a laugh, and as his children encouraged him to try it, he humored them, not thinking much of it. To him, it was a simple gesture from his beloved daughter, an innocent curiosity about his roots. Later that evening, Leonard sat in his armchair, the DNA kit in his hands. The instructions were easy enough to follow. Swab your cheek, seal the sample, and mail it off. With a smile, Leonard did as instructed, thinking little about the significance of the moment. The camera zoomed in as Leonard carefully placed the swab in the container, his hand steady but worn with age. A slow shot captured the small package being dropped into the mailbox under the soft glow of the setting sun, an action that at the time seemed trivial, yet would soon prove to be life-changing. Weeks passed, and the DNA test quickly faded from memory as life continued on. Leonard slipped back into his daily routines. Morning walks, Sunday church services, and quiet afternoons spent on the porch. Evelyn hummed in the kitchen as she prepared dinner, and their children, when they could, stopped by to visit. Everything seemed peaceful, simple, and familiar, just as it had always been. Or so Leonard thought. What began as a birthday gift, a small curiosity about his family history, would soon unravel the life he had spent years building. It would expose secrets buried so deep that not even Evelyn could have predicted what was to come. Leonard Harris had always believed that life followed a rhythm shaped by routine, family, and faith. At 80 years old, his days were filled with purpose, morning walks, meals with Evelyn, and afternoons spent helping at their church. Leonard was a pillar of his community, a quiet, disciplined man, respected for his service as a veteran, his role as a father, and his unwavering dedication as a husband. One ordinary day, the DNA results finally arrived. The envelope had been sitting unopened on the kitchen counter for several days, forgotten under church flyers and Evelyn's handwritten shopping lists. Leonard wasn't avoiding it. The preparations for the church's annual charity event had kept him and Evelyn busy. But tonight, the house was quieter than usual. Evelyn had gone to visit Monique, leaving Leonard alone with nothing but his thoughts. His curiosity got the best of him, and he finally opened the envelope, coffee in hand, expecting to learn about his ancestry. What he found instead was unthinkable. The medical jargon was confusing and cold, and, at first, it didn't make sense. But then Leonard's eyes landed on a section labeled Immediate Family Matches. His name was listed, but where his children's names should have been, there was nothing. He scanned the results. Darnell, Monique, Tyrone, and Kesha, each with a glaring 0% genetic relationship next to their names. Leonard froze. He reread the words, unable to process the truth. His 4 children, the ones he had raised, loved, and nurtured, weren't his biological children. The betrayal was beyond comprehension. The man who had always believed that his life was built on love, trust, and family was now staring at a stark, cold reality. His world was crumbling before his eyes, and with that, everything he thought he knew about his life, his family, and his legacy shattered. The trust he had in his wife, Evelyn, and his children was now in question. Leonard sat in silence, the weight of the results pressing down on him. How could this happen? How could Evelyn, the woman he had loved and trusted for over 5 decades, have kept such a secret from him? What was going on? And who could he turn to with this devastating truth? This was not just a simple discovery. This was the unraveling of a lifetime of memories and beliefs, a moment that would set in motion a chain of events neither Leonard nor his family could have ever predicted. How far would someone go when the truth they've built their life on suddenly crumbles? The betrayal would set off a confrontation, an explosive moment that would change everything forever. The report trembled in Leonard's hands as he sat motionless, his mind racing in disbelief. His 4 children, the ones he had loved, raised, and called his own, were not biologically his. For hours, Leonard sat at the kitchen table in silence. The paper spread before him like a damning accusation. He felt his stomach twist as the weight of the truth settled in, cracking his world wide open. But he couldn't accept it. He needed answers. He had to hear it from Evelyn. She had to explain this. There had to be an explanation. The following evening, Evelyn returned from a church meeting, humming softly to herself. She set her purse down with a tired smile, unaware of what was about to unfold. Leonard sat in the living room, his face drawn, the DNA report resting in his lap. When she entered, he looked up at her, his voice firm but steady. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low but unwavering, "sit down." Her brow furrowed in confusion as she lowered herself into the armchair across from him. She noticed the tension in his posture, but couldn't quite place it. Leonard didn't look at her immediately. Instead, he silently handed her the crumpled report. She glanced at it, not yet understanding its significance. "What's this?" Evelyn asked, her eyes scanning the paper. "Read it," Leonard replied, his tone colder than she'd ever heard it before. Evelyn skimmed the page, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. Her lips pressed tightly together, and she shook her head. "Leonard, this doesn't mean anything. Those tests, they're never correct. I've heard about things like this before. It's a mistake." Leonard's gaze hardened, his voice low but full of conviction. "A mistake," he repeated, his voice growing sharper. "That paper says I'm not their father, Evelyn. Not one of them." Evelyn waved her hand dismissively, avoiding his gaze. "Those companies get things wrong all the time. You're letting this nonsense get in your head. You know how much you mean to this family, Leonard. This changes nothing." Leonard's hand slammed down onto the coffee table, causing Evelyn to jump. "Don't lie to me," he barked, his voice rising. "Don't you dare lie to me again, Evelyn. I need the truth." "I'm telling the truth," she insisted, her voice rising in desperation. "Those children are yours. You raised them, Leonard. You're their father. Blood doesn't change that." Leonard stood up, pacing the room, the crumpled paper in his hands. His mind was spinning. He didn't know what was worse, the report itself or Evelyn's refusal to acknowledge the truth. Finally, After a moment of silent frustration, he stopped and spoke again, his voice quieter now. You know what? I don't need you to admit it. I'll show Darnell. The next day, Leonard called Darnell, his eldest son, under the pretense of needing help with some yard work. Darnell, always the dutiful son, arrived without hesitation. At 48, Darnell was the spitting image of Leonard, strong, steady, and reliable. Leonard watched him for a moment as he bent over to pull weeds from the flower bed. His heart felt heavy. Darnell, Leonard said finally, his voice tight, come inside. I need to talk to you. Inside the house, Leonard sat Darnell down at the kitchen table, the same table where, just days before, he had opened the DNA results. He placed the crumpled report in front of his son. What's this? Darnell asked, his brow furrowing as he unfolded the paper. Just read it, Leonard said, his eyes never leaving his son's face. Darnell skimmed the document quickly, his expression shifting as he processed the words. What is this supposed to mean? He asked, his voice cautious. Leonard's jaw clenched. It means you're not my son. None of you are. He gestured at the paper. That test says I'm not your father, Darnell. I'm not anybody's father. Darnell stared at Leonard, confusion and disbelief written across his face. What are you talking about? That doesn't make sense, Dad. Of course, you're my father. Leonard shook his head, his voice trembling with anger and pain. Look at the paper. It's right there, 0%. I'm not your father, Darnell. I'm not anybody's father. Darnell's expression hardened. He pushed the paper back toward Leonard. Where did this even come from? One of those DNA kits? You're telling me you believe this over 48 years of being my dad? This is ridiculous. Leonard slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. Don't you think I want this to be wrong? He whispered. Don't you think I wish this was a mistake? His voice dropped as he paused, gathering his thoughts. But I can't deny what's right in front of me. Someone's been lying to me for 50 years. Darnell stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't care what that paper says. You're my father, and you always will be. I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense. Leonard watched his son storm out of the house, the door slamming behind him. The weight of the revelation still hung heavy in the air. The house was quiet, yet Leonard's mind was in chaos. He had already shared the devastating truth with his eldest son, Darnell, but now he had to face the rest of his family. Evelyn had denied it, and Darnell had refused to believe it, but the truth on that DNA report would not disappear. No matter how much anyone wished to ignore it, deep down, Leonard knew this was only the beginning. The house that had once been filled with love and memories had now become a battlefield. At 80 years old, Leonard Harris, the patriarch of the family, sat in the living room holding the DNA results, the very paper that had torn apart everything he thought he knew. Leonard had called Darnell over, unable to bear the weight of it all alone. Darnell, though shocked and reeling, tried his best to be strong for his father, but the truth shook him to the core as well. Don't tell your siblings yet, Leonard had said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Kesha is pregnant. I don't want to add more stress to her right now. Darnell reluctantly agreed. He had always been the rock of the family, the one Leonard could rely on, but this time, even Darnell couldn't hide his unease. The knowledge sat inside him like a boulder, heavy and impossible to ignore. When the time came to break the news, Darnell knew it had to come from their father. Days passed, and the family gathered at the Harris household under the pretense of a routine family meeting. Darnell had called Monique, Tyrone, and Kesha over, trying to make it seem like a normal gathering, but the look in his eyes betrayed him. His siblings exchanged uneasy glances, sensing something was off. Leonard stood in the center of the room, his broad shoulders weighed down by the truth he was about to share. Evelyn sat stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, her face tight with anger. She hadn't spoken to Leonard since their explosive argument. Leonard cleared his throat, his voice trembling but firm. I called y'all here because there's something you need to know, he began, pausing as if searching for the right words. It's about this family. It's about me. The room fell silent. Tyrone leaned forward, his frown deepening. What's going on, Dad? Leonard turned to Darnell, who nodded for him to continue. Slowly, Leonard held up the crumpled DNA report. I did one of those ancestry tests a while back, he said, his voice low. The results came in, and it says I'm not your father. Not one of you. The words hung in the air like a bomb. The silence that followed was deafening. Monique's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. What are you talking about, Daddy? That can't be right. Tyrone shook his head, his voice rising in disbelief. Nah, this is crazy. That has to be a mistake. Kesha's face went pale as she instinctively clutched her belly protectively. Daddy, stop. Why are you saying this? Leonard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Evelyn, his face hardening. Tell them, Evelyn. Tell them the truth. Evelyn, who had been sitting silently until now, finally exploded. Truth? You want the truth, Leonard? She shouted, her voice sharp and cutting. Fine. You were never home. You were always off somewhere, fighting wars, serving this country. Do you know what it's like to be alone? To raise kids by yourself? I am a woman, Leonard, a woman with needs. The room froze. Leonard stared at her, his jaw clenched, his fists trembling. Needs, he repeated quietly, the word like venom on his tongue. Monique broke down in sobs, and Tyrone stood up, pacing the room, shaking his head in disbelief. Mama, what are you even saying? Are you telling us you cheated? Evelyn glared defiantly at Leonard, then turned her gaze to her children. You don't know what it was like. I didn't plan for any of this to happen, but your father wasn't here. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to raise y'all in lies? Kesha, still in shock, whispered, Who are our fathers, then? The question hung in the air like a dagger. Evelyn looked away, her voice quieter now, though still sharp. Darnell's father was a neighbor, she said, her voice faltering. He was someone I used to date before I married Leonard. As for Tyrone, she hesitated, shaking her head. I don't know. I just don't know. The room erupted. Monique cried, How could you do this to us, Mama? Tyrone shouted, What do you mean you don't know? Leonard stood silently, his chest heaving. He looked at Evelyn as if she were a stranger, someone he didn't recognize. The weight of it all pressed down on him as the family's world crumbled around them. What he had built, what he had believed in for 50 years, was now a lie. Leonard had never known the truth, but slowly, as the weight of the revelation settled, his mind began to unravel. Memories that he had buried for years resurfaced, haunting him with their implications. He thought back to his deployment, to the time his old friend Harold had pulled him aside, speaking in hushed tones. Leonard, man, people have been talking. You should know. Folks are saying Evelyn's been running around. You might want to keep an eye on things back home. At the time, Leonard had laughed it off. He trusted his wife without hesitation. Not my Evelyn, he had said. She's not like that. Now, those words echoed painfully in his mind. He remembered coming home after months away, feeling something shift. Evelyn had seemed distant. Neighbors whispered as he passed by, and strange glances from men left him uneasy. He had buried his suspicions, chalking it all up to paranoia or the stress from war. But now, Leonard realized with crushing clarity, he wasn't paranoid. He had simply been blind. Leonard's hands shook as he stared at Evelyn. His voice, cold and low, filled the silence between them. While I was out there, fighting for this country, fighting for you, you were busy with other men. You were out here tearing this family apart, while I was breaking my back to keep it together. Evelyn stood her ground, defiant but trembling. I did what I had to do. Leonard stepped closer, his eyes blazing with a mix of rage and grief. You lied to me for 50 years, Evelyn. 50 years. You let me raise children that weren't mine. You let me believe a lie. How do you come back from that? The children watched helplessly, standing in the background as their parents stood face to face, their years of marriage crumbling before their eyes. Tyrone, the eldest son, shouted, Stop it. Both of you just stop. But the pain, betrayal, and anger filled the room, and there was no stopping it. Evelyn turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her, leaving Leonard standing there, shaking, broken, and alone. That night, Leonard sat by himself in the darkened living room, staring at the remnants of the life he had built. Torn photographs littered the floor, and the crumpled DNA report sat on the coffee table. The truth gnawed at him, eating away at the man he once was. Leonard became consumed with the need for answers. His thoughts spiraled into obsession. He couldn't stop thinking about the men Evelyn had been with, about the whispers he had ignored for all those years. Who were they? How many lies had he been fed? Over the next few days, Leonard's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He dug through old letters, journals, and boxes that Evelyn had hidden away, searching for clues. He started asking questions around the neighborhood, confronting people who had once been his friends. Whispers began to spread. Leonard Harris was unraveling. His children tried to reach out, but Leonard pushed them away. To him, their very existence was a reminder of Evelyn's betrayal. The day started like any other, but by nightfall, the Harris family would never be the same again. Leonard Harris sat alone in his quiet home, consumed by the thoughts of betrayal that had now shattered his entire world. The truth had been out for weeks. His children were not his own, and Evelyn had lied to him for 50 years. One name, in particular, haunted him: Raymond Carter. Raymond had been a family friend for decades. He had grown up in the same neighborhood as Leonard, attended the same church, and shared countless family gatherings with them. Leonard had trusted Raymond, trusted him like a brother. But now, every smile, every handshake, and every shared meal felt like an insult. Leonard had uncovered the truth. Raymond was the father of one of his children. The knowledge tore at Leonard's mind like rust eating away at an old blade, eating away at what was left of his composure. The betrayal wasn't just from Evelyn. It was from someone who was supposed to be a friend. That evening, Leonard was invited to a family dinner at Raymond's home. Evelyn had pushed for it, saying it was time to move on, time to fix what had been broken. "We can't live like this, Leonard," she had pleaded. "Let's sit down as a family. Raymond wants to talk this through." Leonard reluctantly agreed, but something in his silence was different this time. The weight of the truth had shifted him. As he sat at the table, the once familiar setting now felt foreign, his mind a storm of emotions. Leonard couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that this dinner, this moment, would be the one that changed everything. Raymond greeted him warmly, but Leonard couldn't return the usual cordiality. The friendly banter they once shared felt hollow now, poisoned by the knowledge Leonard carried. As the conversation unfolded, Leonard felt his resolve harden. He knew, without a doubt, that the truth would come out. It had to, but what would it cost him? The life he had built, the family he had fought so hard to protect, was now in ruins. And Leonard, though filled with anger, could only wonder how far he was willing to go to confront the people who had betrayed him, and how much more of his heart he was willing to break. The dinner went on, but for Leonard, the conversation was already over. The damage had been done. The truth had already broken everything. Evelyn's gaze was cold, hard, and unreadable, a silent storm brewing beneath the surface as Leonard arrived at Raymond's house. The evening was already tinged with unease. The small living room, usually a place of comfort, was now filled with strained conversation. Monique, Tyrone, and Kesha, 3 of the Harris children, did their best to keep up the facade of normalcy, but the tension in the air was undeniable. Raymond greeted Leonard with a forced smile, his handshake hesitant. Evelyn was in the kitchen, fidgeting nervously as she assisted Raymond's wife with the dishes. Leonard, sitting in the corner of the room, barely spoke. His eyes flickered between Raymond and Evelyn, like a pendulum, each word they exchanged scratching at his brain, feeding the anger he was struggling to contain. Finally, unable to remain silent any longer, Leonard stood up. The room went still, all eyes turning toward him. His voice was low but sharp when he spoke. "Raymond," he said, the weight of the moment pressing down on them all. "Can we talk outside?" Raymond shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at the others. "Leonard, now's not the time. Let's just sit down and have a meal." But Leonard stepped closer, his towering figure casting a shadow over Raymond. "Outside. Now." Evelyn's voice pierced the tension. "Leonard, stop this. You're making a scene." Leonard turned slowly to face her, his eyes cold and unwavering. "We settle this once and for all, Evelyn." Raymond sighed, defeated. He gestured toward the back door. "Fine. Let's talk outside." The back porch was dimly lit. only the faint glow from the kitchen window casting shadows over the space. The air was heavy with the scent of rain, the dark clouds above promising a storm. Leonard followed Raymond outside, his footsteps deliberate and slow, each one bringing him closer to the confrontation he had longed for. "What's this about, Leonard?" Raymond asked, trying to keep his tone calm, though his voice trembled slightly. Leonard didn't answer immediately. He stood there, his fists clenched at his sides, staring at Raymond with eyes burning with fury. "You think I don't know?" He finally spat, his voice raw. "You think I don't know what you did to me? What did you do to my family?" Raymond shifted nervously, his eyes flickering back toward the house. "Leonard, we've been friends a long time." "Friends?" Leonard's voice cut through the air, sharp and biting. He let out a bitter laugh. "You slept with my wife, Raymond. You stood in my house, ate my food, smiled at my children, knowing one or two of them might be yours. You call that friendship?" Raymond raised his hands, his voice shaking. "Leonard, listen. It was a mistake a long, long time ago. I never wanted this to come out." Leonard's breathing grew heavier, his shoulders rising and falling with each exhale. His hand slowly moved to his coat pocket, where the weight of his gun anchored him, a reminder of the rage that simmered inside. "You took everything from me, Raymond. Everything." Raymond took a step back. "Leonard, don't do anything stupid." Just then, Evelyn stepped onto the porch, her voice shrill. "Leonard, stop this right now. Go back inside." Leonard turned to face her, his expression dark. "You don't get to tell me what to do, Evelyn. Not anymore." Evelyn's eyes darted to Leonard's hand as he pulled the gun from his coat. "Leonard, please don't," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Raymond's face went pale as he stumbled back. "Leonard, put the gun down. This isn't you." But Leonard was no longer listening. The sound of the gun cocking echoed through the porch, louder than anything else. In one moment, in one heartbeat, the anger, humiliation, and betrayal that had been building inside Leonard exploded. The shot rang out like thunder, shattering the stillness of the night. Raymond staggered, clutching his chest, before collapsing to the floor, the wood beneath him stained with his blood. Evelyn screamed, her voice piercing the air as she fell to her knees beside Raymond's lifeless body. "Leonard, no. What have you done?" Leonard's breathing slowed as he turned to face Evelyn. The gun still hung in his hand, his eyes filled with something unrecognizable. "You did this, Evelyn. You made me into this." Evelyn scrambled backward, her hands raised in surrender, her voice pleading. "Leonard, please don't." Without a word, Leonard raised the gun again, his resolve hardening. The storm had come, and there would be no turning back. Evelyn's sobs filled the room, but the second shot cut them short. The house fell silent, save for the faint crackle of rain as the storm finally broke. Leonard stood still, the gun heavy in his hand, his face an unreadable mask. Slowly, he tucked the pistol back into his coat, his hands stained with blood. He walked through the house, passing his children, who stood frozen, pale-faced, in shock. Leonard didn't say a word as he moved through them, opening the front door and stepping out into the pouring rain. The car's engine roared to life as Leonard drove through the darkened streets, the windshield wipers rhythmically slapping away the rain. He didn't know how long he'd been driving, his mind clouded with thoughts he couldn't fully process. Eventually, he pulled up to his eldest son Darnell's house. Darnell opened the door, his face falling as he took in the sight of his father, soaked to the bone, his coat speckled with blood. "Daddy, what happened?" Darnell asked, his voice trembling with fear. Leonard met his son's gaze, his voice calm and even. "Call the police, son. Tell them where I am." Darnell stepped back, his voice shaking as he spoke again. "Daddy, what did you do?" Leonard exhaled slowly, his words measured. What needed to be done? The police arrived soon after, their flashing lights cutting through the rain-soaked darkness. Leonard stood on the porch, his hands raised in surrender. Officers cuffed him, the murmurs of neighbors filling the air as they gathered in disbelief, whispering to one another, "Did Leonard Harris really just?" Leonard said nothing as he was led to the squad car, silently slipping into the back seat. He stared out the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, his thoughts lost in the storm. In a single night, Leonard Harris had destroyed everything he had spent a lifetime building. Decades of trust, faith, and family were wiped away by 2 bullets. Was it a crime of passion, or the final act of a man pushed too far? What happens to someone when everything they've ever believed in, family, marriage, legacy, turns out to be a lie? For Leonard, the betrayal cut deeper than words could express. A man who had built his life on honor, loyalty, and sacrifice found himself staring at the wreckage of a lifetime spent trusting the wrong people. Was this the act of a broken heart, a man pushed beyond his breaking point? Or had the truth unearthed something darker, something buried deep inside him for decades? Imagine standing in Leonard's shoes. You've given your all to your family, your time, your love, your very soul, only to find out that the children you raised aren't yours. The trial of Leonard Harris drew the attention of the entire town. The once respected veteran, church elder, and family man now sat in a cold courtroom, his hands cuffed, his face gaunt and emotionless. The weight of his actions, the killing of his wife Evelyn and family friend Raymond Carter, hung heavily in the air. The proceedings were swift. Leonard didn't contest the charges. There was no elaborate defense, no plea for mercy. He sat in silence, listening as the prosecution recounted his crimes in chilling detail. The prosecutor painted him as a man consumed by rage, while others whispered that Leonard was a man who had been pushed too far, his breaking point buried beneath years of betrayal. When a sentence was handed down, life in prison without the possibility of parole, Leonard barely reacted. He simply nodded, as if he had already accepted his fate. But for the Harris children, the fallout was devastating. In a matter of moments, they had lost everything, both their mother and their father, and the life they thought they knew. Monique, Tyrone, Darnell, and Kesha sat together in the courtroom, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. They were left to carry the scars of a story they never asked to be a part of, a story born of betrayal and secrets. This tragic case forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Trust, no matter how solid it seems, can shatter in an instant. How fragile is the foundation of a family when built on lies? And what is the real price of betrayal when it destroys not just individuals, but entire generations? Leonard Harris's story is not just about a crime. It's about the breaking of a man who believed he had given everything, only to discover he had nothing at all. If this story gripped you as much as it did us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this case? Was Leonard a man pushed too far, or was there another way out? Could anyone survive such a betrayal without breaking? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching Shocking Real Life Crime Stories. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next story.